So exciting.
What are we talking about today?
I wanted to talk about the Forbes article, maybe it's a Washington Post article. I want to talk about that. New York Times.
The Forbes article.
There's a Forbes one. I'm going to put it in the links right there. I'm going to put that there.
Oh, we love Forbes articles. There's a long history of those on the show.
Yes. Also, the writers always tend to be top talent.
There's also another one. A U.S. senator basically tears into Microsoft.
I definitely want to talk
that
about
one's on the list.
Yeah.
Definitely want to talk about our Minecraft.
Minecraft? What?
Whoa,
remote code execution through Minecraft.
Oh, is it Log4j again?
Woo!
Log5j?
I thought
RCE.
You said Minecraft. I thought you were going to mention a different thing with Minecraft.
Oh no!
I actually got a blast today from Overt Operator that was pointing out that Russia is using Minecraft for spreading propaganda now.
No.
What is the world
Color
coming
me
to?
shocked.
Russia never spreads propaganda.
Are you telling me that little Timmy shouldn't be in, the motherland, the motherland for all? What are you doing? I'm working in the fields, mother. This is my assigned labor. What are you doing? I'm farming for potatoes. What are they for? You know what they're for.
Why do you keep growing cabbage?
Oh, it's just Timmy's potatoes.
Timmy figured out how to make vodka in Minecraft.
Oh,
So I was asking people earlier today. We'll ask the rest of the people. What movie is that picture from? I can zoom in on it if you'd like.
Oh my God, that is Howard the Duck.
Okay, you got the Howard the Duck one in Polish, but what's the one in the middle? That's my favorite.
Ooh.
Is that Howl's Moving Castle?
Close, damn close, but no.
You got to give time for the viewers. There's a delay.
Yeah.
How to lose a guy in 10 days?
So close, Ralph.
Oh
I
my
do remember, actually, the after credit in the after credit scene of that, there is actually an alien that destroys the entire world. You just have to keep watching after the credits.
All the credits through all the Natalie Merchant songs.
Yeah.
All the way through. So what cartoons like in the 80s, I don't know, for those of you that were around in the 80s, like completely and utterly messed with your head. So like HBO for me, I remember Wizard was one of them. There was this one called The Fantastic Planet. It was French. And it was about like humans were basically pets and servants for like these alien overlords. And these alien overlords would like transport their minds to a planet where they would have sex, and then the humans go to that planet and destroy. And it's totally effed up.
You know what used to mess me? A fire at ice.
Oh my God! Right. That threw me for a loop. Another one, Last Unicorn. When I was a kid, Last Unicorn was definitely one. But the other movie that really messed me up was this one. It's Nausicaa's Valley of the Wind. And it is Studio Ghibli. And it is absolutely a fantastic movie. If anyone has ever... No, it's not heavy metal, Fat Manuel. It is a fantastic movie. And I actually got a chance when I grew up. I saw the edited American version, and I finally got a chance to see the full version, the original studio, and it made way more sense than the American version did. And the other two are just Polish movie posters. So there we go.
Yeah, and I know it sounds weird, but I'm still messed up by Never Ending Story. One day,
Never Ending Story. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Well, I hated the fact that what was that TV show, Stranger Things? They turned it into a joke.
Yeah.
The Never Ending Story, I think you would agree, was no joke. Like when the horse dies in that movie, or the big rock thing is just sitting and waiting for death to come. That was heavy shit for kids, right?
Yeah.
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 Now they have Baby Einstein. I mean, when we were kids, they were just dropped here, watch Never Ending Story.
didn't
Why
care.
is the
Yep.
horse dying? Like,
Exactly.
So
Ryan, roll the finger.
Are we ready?
Roll that beautiful finger footage.
Roll it.
3, 2.
hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security, talking about news. My name is John Strand, and in this edition, July 31st, 2023, we've got a handful of stories. We've got the SEC now requires companies to disclose cyber attacks in 4 days, which is roughly 395 days faster than they do now. New OpenSSH vulnerability, top Russian security cyber executive sentenced to 14 years, which is better than falling out of a window. Ubuntu vulnerabilities, Minecraft vulnerabilities, and I would like to start today by talking about the Chinese doing what the Chinese do. And specifically, I want to talk about how Chinese malware could cut power to U.S. military businesses and homes, or a report claims they could, which means that crap's absolutely true. But I think
From
there's
Forbes,
actually,
it's from Forbes.
it is from Forbes, right? It is.
So.
And apparently this has been such an issue that it's actually been elevated to the White House Situation Room, which isn't just a boring alternative to Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room. Kind of like
Normally that room, they just serve ice cream.
they just
But
serve ice
now,
cream.
but now it's been upgraded.
Yeah.
That's the machine.
Okay, so this is one of those articles that's incredibly vague. It's maddening. It's
What?
like the Chinese have hacked lots of stuff, and it's a ticking time bomb, and it's showing up in all these.
There's
It's
a
like,
critical
okay,
quote.
what are the IOCs? What were the techniques that they used? And my take on this is that this is a slow burn, that China's been doing this for a long time. There is no specific IOC to be able to track what they have done, because they've been using any and all of the IOCs that they possibly could. And I don't know. I wanted to get y'all's opinion on that. Because it really does seem like for years, China has just been absolutely open season against almost every aspect.
Well, John, don't worry, because it says here that some members of Congress, state governors, and utility companies have been briefed on the malware. So out of those three
they've been
groups,
briefed.
one of them might understand the threat partially.
Actually, we're going to get to a senator that kind of freaked me out a little bit in a good way. We'll talk about that here in a second.
Oh my.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mean it like that, PSD. Oh, God. Oh, God. God, now people are going to think that I'm into like really old senators and Pornhub. I don't need that, man. That's nasty.
No.
That's not my fetish, man. Just to be clear, BSD has a dirty, dirty mind.
Wow.
Oh.
But what do we, so, my problem with this, there's two problems I have with this, is I feel like the entire industry is completely built upon the idea of signatures. An attacker did these following things. Here's a signature in an AV. Here's a signature in a SIM. Here's an IOC. Here's the process mutex for this. Here's what you can do to detect this. And part of what I'm getting out of this article is there isn't any. Like, this goes back to one of the things we've been saying on the show for a while. An advanced adversary is going to use any and all the techniques that are available to them to break into your network. It's not like there's going to be a cyber kill chain of 15 steps. And if you stop one of those, then you're going to stop the attackers. I think that they aren't putting out specific IOCs for this, because this has been a long burn. And honestly, this is very similar to what the United States does. Like the NSA, TAO, or Equation Group, whatever the hell they want to call themselves now, they don't restrict themselves to just a specific handful of vulnerabilities to gain access. They use any and all means to gain access to the specific targets that they're going after. And that makes defending that a lot more difficult. But I wanted to throw it over to you and kind of get your feelings on this.
We need some technical details, because it could just be like an SSL cert is expiring. Like that could be the ticking time bomb. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like, I'm assuming it's supply chain related. I'm assuming it's not like intrusion. It's like, if you purchase this model of this between these years of, then it could be infected with a backdoor that they could use to shut it off or whatever. But yeah, technical details required. You can't just be like, hey, there's some malware. It could turn off some power plants. All right, cool. Situation room update. Nothing has changed. Like it's just
Well, I think one of the telling things from the article itself. I mean, we all know that it's very difficult to defend. We all know that, and all they need is one small thing to get in. Number one, we all know that we also need to be better at detecting once they are inside, and that's not about IOCs. That is about looking at the big picture and looking at what you're supposed to have on your network, as opposed to what's actually going on to it. But reading through the article, the couple of things that pop out to me is, the first statement is the Biden administration believes China has installed malware. They're not even 100% certain. And then it says it's unknown whether the Chinese government is aware of this malware, and it's not clear how effective the malware would be. This whole article sounds like
There's some fine reporting there, Stu.
to be honest, it sounds like us in the field sitting around in a bar drinking, going, you know what they could do next?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what the
Basically, this sounds
situation
like-
room is like. That's how I imagine the situation room in my head.
Okay, so who sent them a copy of Backdoors and Breaches?
Oh,
They're like, there's an email thread with backdoors and breaches, and they're like, oh my god, we just discovered a potential malware that could take down.
We'd
Don't
like to
play
take this
this
opportunity
game.
to make sure that you get your copy of Backdoors and Breaches. Be sure to check it out at spearfishgeneralstore.com. And you too can be as up to date, if not more up to date, than the current administration on the current Chinese attacks coming in. The thing that bothers me about this article also is that for those of us that are in it every day, like Mike is talking about, we're reading this like, yeah, of course, this makes sense. I mean, is this newsworthy? And yet my phone's blowing up. I have customers and I have people that are like, oh my God, the Chinese are in everything. I'm like, they have been. Like, and not only have they been, I expected them to do that. And to be honest, if they weren't, like if the report was like, China is not able to break into anything in America, I'd be like, come on, Chinese, you could do better.
I mean, we just talked about it last week. They're in people's email. If they're in the email, they're definitely in the power grids. I also love that they just confidently say, if attacked, power grids will restore power within a few days. Like, what? Like, where'd you make that up? Like, what is that the time it takes someone to drive a truck to all the switches? Like, who came up with this?
This is, and all joking aside, this is real, right? The Chinese are.
Well, it is Forbes. I don't know.
Yeah, they're sitting in a bunch of infrastructure because we totally would expect them to do that. Like we would totally expect them to do that. And also this, like Mike was talking about, whenever you're trying to defend your network, it isn't just about signatures, right? It's about, once again, just like Mike said, know what's normal and baselining what's in your network. It's not an issue of just waiting for a big red button that tells you when things are wrong. I was in a focus group. I don't know if I talked about this in the previous show, let me know, but I was in this focus group and there was a bunch of different people in different industries and they were talking about what they wanted in computer security and like computer security training. And one of the quotes that really bothered me is someone in the training said, you know what, John, you were talking about all kinds of core Windows, core Linux, core networking, and understanding those core concepts of IT. And I need you to understand, I just need my security team to understand what an alert means, understand the impact to an organization, and how to react to that alert. They don't need to know Windows like basic internals, command line, Active Directory, Linux, and networking. And because it was a focus group, I couldn't just go, that is one of the dumbest string of sentences I've ever heard stitched together in this industry, but it is. But when we're looking at a lot of people, especially in America, they're absolutely focused on, I want a big red button. I want a signature. I want CISA to give me a bunch of IOCs. I want to go to the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix. I want to string it together. I want to make sure that my SIM can detect these things. And then I want to go to bed at night. And it's not an issue of, we really do have to know networking. We really do have to know Windows internals. We really do have to know Linux to be able to defend our networks properly. Everyone wants to just jump to the easy button that solves their computer security problems.
Everybody wants it to be in default configuration also. So that way there's no thinking behind it. Here, put it into default and you're perfectly safe. I mean, you see all the marketing material saying that.
Oh, we're coming back to that, Mike.
It's okay. I just, what I do is every year I go to Black Hat right? I walk the
There we
floor, and every booth that says that it's unhackable, that's what I buy, and it's good.
And you're good.
You're
Yeah,
good
and it is,
every
because most
year.
of those companies
Well,
don't
make,
exist.
make
next
sure
year.
you pay your dues for your cyber insurance too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, you got to do that.
But I think the problem with that fundamentally, there's two perspectives to that. Number one, we have people coming directly into infosec that are not necessarily understanding the underlying concepts. They are jumping to a more senior security role. And I mean, I kind of did this myself 13 years ago. I transitioned from navigating submarines to assembling compliance documents. And then I became a system admin later. But promoting people up through the ranks that don't have system or network administration experience, and then putting them in a SOC and saying, okay, well, you're going to live and die by the alert. It's how quick you can close this seems to be kind of the problem to it. And I'm all for more people coming into industry, and I'm all for empowering people to do so. But the other side of that is I think a lot of our executives, we've got some really good CISOs and CSOs in industry, but I'm also seeing a lot of times where InfoSec is falling under finance, or you've got people who came up through the ranks of finance or even HR landing themselves into security roles, not understanding what it's like to be at the ground floor of security.
And just like you said, Joe, I think, I mean, I want to just clarify, it is getting better. I mean, you and I have talked about this. Like if we go back 10, 15 years ago, or 20, 23, whatever, it was way worse, right? I mean, at least now we're seeing a larger and larger percentage of organizations that have people that are in the like the CTO role or the CISO role that actually do get it. They did come up through the trenches. They do understand why basics and fundamentals are important. So I don't want to be all like doom and gloom, not saying that that's what you said, but I just want to push on that point. It is getting better, right? I mean, I don't know everybody else, like your thoughts are, is it in fact getting better as far as management, understanding the risks a little better?
A little bit. I think that we run into a problem that in a lot of cases that CISO level is reporting up to somebody that still doesn't understand it, at least in completeness. And there's still a communication gap there. Even though the CISO should be able to go ahead and talk business language, I think we're still working on getting that business language and our language to be compatible to some degree.
Ooh,
I think it
really
depends
hit
on the
something
company.
hard on that.
What was that?
Oh, I was
Okay.
saying he hit something really hard on that because as an industry, we're getting better at speaking business as well. Instead of focusing exclusively on speaking nerd, we're getting better at speaking business. But I think the major game changer for this might be having an InfoSec management course included in MBA curriculum, and not an MBA with focus in InfoSec or cyber policy. I mean, as part of a core MBA, you take finance, you take accounting, you take marketing, you take InfoSec management, so that you can understand that.
No,
And we've seen that with a lot of fields. Like we've seen that happen with development, where like secure coding is just part of a development degree now. Like at least at good schools, where it's not like before it was like, yeah, whatever, just InfoSec will come and yell at you if you do something wrong. Now it's like, no, you need to do like DevSecOps. You need to like parameterize your queries from the beginning. Like there's a little bit of security and a lot of non-security stuff now, and I think it's good. Honestly, as an attacker, it's a huge pain when non-security tools have security things integrated into them, like, basic rate limiting or things like that are not really InfoSec things, but when they're implemented, they can give you a little bit more protection. So I think that's right on the mark.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are learning, and it's terrifying when they learn, there's this senator, what was his name?
Wyden.
Ron Wyden out of Oregon.
Woo! Oregon!
Oregon, coming in here
Clearly,
hot.
this person has been hanging out with Corey.
We have 3 people.
3 people in Oregon.
It's a
So
small
I'm gonna kind of take a crack at the person that wrote this up for the Register. They're basically saying it victim blames Microsoft for Chinese hack. Brandon, my friend, you didn't read what the senator wrote. Oh my God, it is incredibly well written. And whenever I first read this, I was like, oh, it's another politician that doesn't know anything at all about computer security, and it's going to be the internet is a series of tubes, and you just can't dump everything into it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some of the things that I read in the actual letter, and I'm going to provide a link to the letter so everyone can go read it. Don't read the registrar's take on it, because the registrar's take on it is wrong. It is an incredibly well-written letter. So basically, the way that the letter is written is kind of calling out CISA a little bit. And I couldn't quite figure out how in the hell he was going to tie SolarWinds back to Microsoft, but he did. Mm-hmm. And the senator basically was kind of blaming Microsoft for the recent thing about keys, and brings up some incredibly interesting points about the keys. Basically, Microsoft didn't even follow their own best practices. Now, I am going to kind of agree with the registrar on this. If the senator honestly believes that Microsoft is going to honor their own best practices, that's a little bit naive. But they were talking about how this is something that's really important. It wasn't in a hardware security module or anything like that. That's kind of a little bit of a good point. That may be difficult in virtualized environments, but that's neither here nor there. But there are some sections in this that I think that are really important, and I'm going to read some of them to you. Microsoft never took responsibility for its role in SolarWinds hacking campaign. Now, that seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but it kind of ties together. Microsoft blamed federal agencies for not pushing to prioritize defending against the encryption key theft technique used by Russia. Oh, holy hell. He understands the SolarWinds attack, and he's tying Microsoft for basically telling federal agencies that they have to watch out for what the SolarWinds attack was, which was literally a key encryption key theft technique. That shows levels and depths of understanding that many people in IT security do not understand. But basically said, Microsoft blamed federal agencies for not pushing it to prioritize defending against the encryption key theft used by Russians, which Microsoft has known about this technique since 2017. Microsoft blamed its customers this goes back to what we just were talking about, blamed its customers for using default logging settings chosen by Microsoft, and then it blamed them for not storing high-value encryption keys in a hardware vault known as a hardware security module. So this is all really, really interesting because it shows that the senator understands. Microsoft was basically calling out what was done in the SolarWinds attack. Microsoft told the government to look out for these types of attacks, and then itself got hit by the exact same attack. Further in this, it said Microsoft's customers heard the message. It's too hard to secure these keys on your own servers, so let Microsoft do it for you. In the 3 years since that high-profile hacking campaign, they're talking about SolarWinds, Microsoft's cloud security business revenues have ballooned to over $20 billion per year. So that was true. Microsoft was basically going to the government and was telling people in the government, the SolarWinds thing is crazy. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be developing on-prem solutions. You should be moving as much as you possibly can into the cloud. And then Microsoft gets hit with this attack as well. And then another quote that I thought was great, Microsoft pointed out after the SolarWinds incident, high-value encryption keys should be stored in an HSM. And then third, the encryption key used in this latest attack was created by Microsoft in 2016, and it expired in 2021. Federal cybersecurity guidelines, industry best practices, and Microsoft's own recommendations to customers dictate that encryption keys be refreshed more frequently for the very reason that they might become compromised. Once again,
Mic drop.
Crap, the Senate is learning, folks.
Well,
if anyone was wondering, of the two Western states, Oregon is not the one owned by Microsoft. That's Washington. That's the one. Oh yeah.
So
and then at the end, I want to wrap this up. When SolarWinds happened, CISA basically said that they were going to pull together a review board. And that review board was going to analyze what happened at SolarWinds and make recommendations. That never happened. And that is a concern for the senator as well. So the senator then calls out Jen Easterly and says, I urge you to exercise your shared authority to direct the Cyber Safety Review Board to investigate this incident In particular, the board should examine whether Microsoft stored the stolen encryption key in an HSM, a best practice recommended by the NSA and even by Microsoft. And if not, examine why Microsoft failed to follow its own security advice. The board should also examine why Microsoft's negligence was not discovered during external audits that are required to obtain certification for government's use under FedRAMP. At that particular scenario, like the senator is basically pulling out big guns, basically saying, hey, Microsoft fills out all this paperwork for FedRAMP and fills out all this paperwork to be a government cloud provider. And then this stuff happens, and it shows very clearly that Microsoft is not even following its own best practices. And further, that is a shot across the bow. If Microsoft is saying that it's doing that for FedRAMP, it's saying it's doing that to win very large government contracts, and it turns out that it's not, that basically puts the government in a situation, be it DOD or unclassified, just general civilian government, that they could actually start asking for funds back from Microsoft. Whether or not that would ever happen, I honestly doubt. But holy hell, this is an absolutely well-written letter. And it was not like the way the Register poo-pooed it and said that they were victim blaming. Once again, I don't think the Register actually read this article at all. But this absolutely hits like, what is it? That one code. Sen Wyden has some good quality staffers on IT security. He hits hard on security and privacy pieces. And yes, this is a fantastically well-written piece.
Yeah.
So I'm done dictating and I'm going to throw it to the group. What are your thoughts on this? Like, this is the most impressive thing I've seen come out of a senator when it comes to computer security as in ever.
So hopefully someone can fact check me on this, because I was trying to do it in the background, but I could have sworn that I would have sworn that Wyden was previously had some sort of role or job in security, because I vaguely remember a long time ago thinking to myself, I'm like, we've got a penetration tester in Congress? What? And
It's not him.
It's not him. Who is
I've
it?
already done the background investigation on him.
Okay.
The TLDR on him is he went to high school in Palo Alto, originally went to UCSB on a basketball scholarship, transferred to Stanford, and has been in Senate since 1996. He used to teach gerontology at several Oregon universities.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's a different.
Damn, Joe, you should have a class where you teach
He was,
OSINT.
yeah. If Joe only had a
know-
class, we could do open source intelligence on things. And people.
If only I was going to teach a class at 6 p.m. tonight on that topic to get people ready for the Trace Labs event at DEF CON.
Where
my
would I
God.
sign up for this?
If only you could give us a link that we could share with our audience.
Oh man, where do I sign up?
Oh man, yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Let me open up Bitly and get it for you.
There we go.
But I
Go
mean,
on, go on.
but even still, I think what was said was 100% correct. Is that there are some staffers there that realize that he understands these topics, and he has surrounded himself with staffers that can help distill that knowledge for him.
You got to pick a lane, And
Yeah.
like it's a good lane to be in. I'm proud of my senator somehow. I can't believe I just said that.
How did
I feel like I need to go like purge.
Yeah. Oof.
I didn't know.
So-
Next.
It's been so long since I've been proud of a government official that the feeling is weird and bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
it's
let's
uncomfortable.
bring feelings of Russian cybersecurity executives being sentenced to 14 years in prison for treason. Classic treason. You got
Classic
What?
treason.
not. Let's be honest. It's 14 years in prison treason, not dumping.
But don't worry, the trial was quite transparent. It was held behind closed doors.
Always is.
which may or may not have been glass. I've been told.
So this is the CEO of Ilya Sakov, which is the founder of Group IB, which specializes in combating cyber attacks and online fraud and investigating high-tech security crimes. Top Russian banks and companies, including state-run banks, are among the company's clients.
Do you ever wonder if maybe that Shakov, like literally the only thing he did was make VirusTotal like permissions overly permissive and sharing the files out? Maybe, I don't know.
So does anyone know what the person actually allegedly did? Or is it like
Treason. It's right
yeah,
here.
but I know, but like treason could be like you made us look bad by attributing the acts of Fuzzy Bear 12 to the Russians.
Specifically, high treason.
Yeah, but high treason is just when it's
They
public.
committed treason? Is that what that means? No.
No,
No.
no. That's a different kind of
Yes,
treason.
there's
That's
been
treason
some
under the influence. TUI.
treason.
Treason under the influence.
Treason under the-
So I mean, this article is very thin on details. Is there any like? Do we know what they did?
No.
Allegedly.
I've
It's
got a number.
basically what they're saying is, what is it? The state news agency TASS said that he allegedly had passed classified information to foreign spies.
Okay, so basically,
yes.
like, why don't they just
Talk to the
pre-publish the article now that says they fell out of a window?
Because it's going to happen. Right?
Because
Like,
they haven't. Just sitting in WordPress, like ready.
Yeah.
To, like
It's scheduled for publication.
Scheduled. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, guys, y'all, there's a queue, and he's at the bottom of that queue. They'll get to him when they get to him. Customer service queue, the girl from Ipanema. It's going to take a while, but he'll get there. He'll get there. We'll find out that his prison cell, he had a window, and it was on like the 30th floor. So all joking aside, I feel bad for the dude and his family.
But if you went to Russian prison, at least you're not on the front lines in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. It is
That's
probably.
Or is that?
Yeah,
Did they
that's-
move the prison to Ukraine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
That's
They
where
gave that
prison
option to a
starts
bunch
now.
of prisoners in Russia, and they chose prison in Russia over going to the front lines in Ukraine. That's just this is better.
That's how
This
they're
is
gonna-
very depressing.
They're gonna
this
run.
is horrible, but I choose life.
Yes.
It's so
The
Was that
the
Wow,
Reuters
deep
article
thought.
actually gives a little bit more besides the classified information. It basically is saying that he was arrested back in 2021, so this has been a couple of years now before he was done that. He has not been involved really with Group IB, although he still owns a share in it for years. And
Sure.
Group IB cut this year's with its original market in Russia. So you think that he cut ties with all that. You think with the way things have been going with Putin, somebody went ahead and flipped him off again.
Probably.
yeah.
What I'm picking up on the OSINT perspective of this would be that his conviction is the result of a former FSB cyber official that was also convicted of treason, being in retaliation for him giving false testimony that led to the conviction. And he is alleged to have provided information to Western intelligence agencies about the founder of another company who is arrested in Switzerland. And the other company is M13.
Yeah. The only way you get arrested for hacking in Russia is by telling the U.S. government about it.
Oh, that's probably a quote. That's quotable.
So Bronwyn threw in something in here that I didn't know. So defenestration is the act of throwing someone or something out of a window, which begs the question and implies that fenestration is throwing someone into a window.
Oh.
No?
So
I
then
guess
would it be
with that.
fenestration and defenestration if you tried to throw somebody out of a closed window, because you would be throwing them into the window first and then out?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the other question is
top
can you
side.
say that you're going to go fenestrate windows? Is that like a thing? Like instead of
Oh.
like I'm going to go fenestrate my laptop, guys. I'll be
What
back.
if you're throwing windows?
Corey, you can start getting into reports. Defenestrated Windows Server 20.
So
Yeah.
weirdly
Like
enough,
my socks with Rock'em Sock'em robots on them.
we've figured out how.
I gotta defend Joe here for a second. You know, some people are saying that Joe got the agenda before. No. Joe does this crap on the fly quickly. So,
First off,
we're just saying,
agenda.
because it's real and it's
You know what? You know what you should do just to prove him wrong? You should take his class and just be in
Yes.
his chat the whole time,
Yes.
watching him do it and being like, "You can't be doing that.
You can't do that fast.
I mean,
It's
really,
impossible."
Like I said, the ridiculous thing isn't to challenge that Joe did it that quickly. It's to think that we have an agenda or forethought.
What a compliment, honestly. What a compliment. You really think so highly of us.
Oh, and by the way, to throw another bone out there, if you're not available tonight, I'm also teaching a 2-day OSINT mastery course as part of the Antisyphon Blue Team Summit as well at the end of August. If you want the skills,
We'll get a
too.
link for that for people too.
But
Don't mind if I
Antisyphon is a
do.
Black Hills company. I heard they are amazing.
I like this company. Very nice people.
My intelligence says the same thing. Rewarded with some T-shirts and swag next week.
Yeah, they're okay.
All right, hold on. I have terrible breaking news. It's not the year of the Linux desktop because almost 40% of Ubuntu users are vulnerable to new privilege elevation.
There's two separate ones.
It's
There's two separate users.
We're canceling it. We're actually pushing the
I thought it was
Linux desktop
RCE.
back to next year.
Oh no, remote code inject.
I was
Yeah,
totally
there's two of
thinking it's the year of the Linux desktop when we were going over the stuff from the Senator and Windows, but I've learned to keep my mouth shut about that.
Thank God I run BSD.
Well done, sir. All right, so
Run VS.
we have these two vulnerabilities. Their CV SS score is 7.8 and 7.8. So combined, that's above 15.
This is not the first overlay FS bug. There's been many overlay FS privilege elevations over the years.
Yeah.
So
what is overlay FS like? What is its claim to fame? Like, why is it?
I'm just going to read the technical description off the news. It's a union mount file system implementation targeted by threat actors. I think basically overlay FS is like rootkit. CH rooting for essentially the file system, because you can't just have ext4 on LVM without overlay FS.
Yeah, so it just mounts a bunch of different file systems into one hierarchy structure, right? So you could have a couple different partitions. You bring them all together, and it looks like one union file system, right? I know it's union FS, but it's just so you can have multiple disks and they can all look as one drive together. So that's the basic high level concept.
It's not just Ubuntu that uses it. I think almost every distro. Yeah. It's like the print spooler of Linux.
Yes.
There you go.
It's kind of the bug whipping boy
on Twitter that were basically like, "This is why we don't use Ubuntu."
This is how I want to react to this. The difference between using Ubuntu and not using Ubuntu is, in this case, your bug in your operating system hasn't been disclosed or fixed.
Agreed. And from that same vein, I just saw a thing on Twitter not too long ago about someone having found a bug and submitting it through the proper CVE channels and what have you, and Red Hat being like, "Yeah, no, we're not doing anything with it because it's with CentOS," and it's like,
ouch.
They were like, "We only want to focus on Fedora." It's like, I had this conversation with someone the other day. They're like, "Oh, I like to use Fedora." I'm like, I won't use Fedora because it's a test bed. That's it. If I'm using Linux, and I use Linux pretty heavily, but I tend to go strictly on a Raspberry Pi for, we'll just say, reasons. Take a class and you'll learn. But with Ubuntu, you've got that, unless you want to go into the BSD ecosystem. So, if you want something that's easy to use out of the box, Ubuntu.
We have a guy for that too.
I was throwing that bone over.
Catch that beautiful butterfly.
BSD is just a beautiful system by design.
I have bad news. It also uses overlay FS, so someone's going to have to go find that bug.
Yeah.
Hey,
I believe
the good thing about that
is a beautiful system by design. I don't know about BSD. That's all I'm
talking about. Someone in the comments said, what was it? Go with Red Star OS. I hear that they're pretty strong.
Yes. Also, if you find a privilege elevation in that, you get a free 14-year conviction for treason.
So I do want you all, I want to have fun with it. I want you to go on Reddit and look at all of the different posts where people are like, which version of Linux should I use? And just constantly recommend Red Star OS. And let's see if we can actually get that to show up. And have
in Shodan, like Red Star OS operating system?
0.01% of the internet. We did it, everybody. That's what we're looking for.
Remove the needle.
Anybody got a Reddit API key? Because I might have a script to go ahead and do that automatically for us.
I thought they shut down a bunch
of
they fresh out.
Yeah, that's why I said that.
Spaz or whatever. So.
Also fresh out of my excrement API. Or Twitter, sorry.
Actually, there's a good point in the chat as well, because Mac, at least to some degree, is built off of BSD, so there's a chance that Apple may actually assist with that.
Yeah. So Mac uses the Mac uses BSD's network stack, TCP/IP stack.
Everyone, so
Um,
does Linux. That's
well,
BSD. Yeah.
but it's just and there's some remnants of BSD in the Mac kernel, but other than that, I mean, BSD still lives. I will still hold on to it to the day I die.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
here's the reality. BSD has to live on in the infosec world because pfSense and OpenSense run on BSD.
Not
And
anymore.
so
Well, they're moving away from it. They're trying everyone's trying to ditch it. Like TrueNAS ditched it, but we'll see.
they're trying. You know what it is too? Like in reality, it really doesn't matter what you use. And we talked about this earlier. As long as you understand how something works, you can make it do your bidding, right? If
Yeah.
you're an IP tables guy, you can lock it down to whatever your heart's desire. I can take an open BSD box. I don't need pfSense. I could just use PF itself. Use the pf.conf. VI is my guy, right?
Yeah.
And I can lock down a box literally with just plain old open BSD and PF. You can do the same on a Mac as well too.
Well, let's kind of go down this. I mean, we got one more story that I want to get to, but let's go down this philosophical rabbit hole because there's two things, right? I was talking about the presentation, the coming war on general purpose computing. I can't remember who wrote that. I've just brain farted his name. But really kind of going through, the idea of moving to cloud computing, that article by that senator, Microsoft and Amazon and a bunch of the cloud vendors, they're trying absolutely to break us away from that model of us building up our own computers, setting up our own stacks, running absolutely everything and running it in the cloud. And then, however they do key management is how the hell they do key management, whether or not that's right, wrong, or indifferent, never mind the man behind the curtain, right? But the thing that bothers me about this is that balance, right? Is, the actual technical geek in me hates the idea of the cloud. I've hated it forever. Like as soon as it came out, sure, it's at somebody else's computer. I resonated with that at a deep personal level. That was weird. But the reality of the situation is Microsoft and a lot of these vendors are right. The overwhelming majority of organizations, they absolutely do not have the technical skills to be able to manage their entire technological stack. And the cloud is more secure. Even though these vulnerabilities come out, the cloud is inherently more secure. So I really feel like I'm horribly conflicted about this entire thing, right? Like, we're talking about Raspberry Pis. Joe's talking about that. And I'm like, ooh, tell me more. If there was only a link that was dropped in the comments and where you can actually get Joe's class so you could find out about that, that is something that's really, really cool, right? I want to do that. That's awesome. But at the same time, whenever I'm talking to companies, they're like, well, we want to do our entire technology stack from the ground up. I'm like, hell no. You really, really, really do not want to do that. So how in the hell do we balance this as being, technologists and loving it as a hobby and then balancing that with like, no, you probably suck at IT. And I'm only saying that because everybody sucks at IT. It's better if we just let Microsoft, Amazon, and them do that for us.
So you're
well, I think part of it is that, and we're starting to see that with what's gone on with Microsoft with the latest breaches. We see it with all the CVEs. Is that reality is even Microsoft sucks at IT. They're just better at masking it and making the majority feel better about it.
I would say that you're basically making the case for CSOs because that is a spectrum of decisions that is made by someone who hopefully knows what they're doing. Like with the Microsoft thing, we talked about, yes, there's flaws. Yes, there's issues. Still better than on-prem Exchange. Still better than hosted Exchange. And the biggest thing that's going to be a selling point for most customers is they aren't the ones who have to fix it. They're just like, hey, Microsoft, you're bad. And Microsoft is like, sorry. Like, it's not like, oh, we have to hire someone or we have to, oh, crap, we have downtime or whatever. So, like, I do think it's a spectrum of decision-making. And not to be like the guy who's all cloud native and all that stuff, but it basically just depends to the solution. Like, manually locking down a box with PF is a great idea until you have to like integrate a threat feed and then you're like, crap. Like it's going to break down eventually once you reach, or like, let's say you need to go 10 gig or 40 gig. You're not going to get PF to go 40 gig. Maybe you can. I don't know. I can't. If you hit a certain rule set size. So like, I think it's just pick the right solution for the job. It's like any other, it's like any other thing. Maybe you need a torque wrench. Maybe you just need a hammer. Your call.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, if you throw a torque wrench hard enough, it acts as a hammer. So they've got that as
Exactly.
True.
well. But to
Also,
go with
and
that
we've
a little
talked about it. We've talked about it on the show too. The narrative matters, right? You know, Microsoft had the access token issue, right? And a bunch of organizations got compromised. We aren't talking about any of those compromises at all on the show. We aren't going through and saying, you know, look at what happened to this. This is what got breached. These people made this mistake. The entire narrative and what the senator was talking about is about Microsoft screwing up. Microsoft took the responsibility for that narrative. So if you're a CISO and you're like, I want to go through and I want to build up our entire technology stack, fine, that's all good in the hood. But as soon as there's a vulnerability, you are taking responsibility for that entire stack. If it's in the cloud and there's a vulnerability, then the narrative becomes there's a vulnerability in the Microsoft technology stack. So like I said, it really sucks because philosophically, I want to be that, you know, sandal wearing hippie out of California or Oregon, where all operating systems and all software is free. But the pragmatist in me is like, no, you really, really should be.
So
you should be going to cloud.
The other thing we should talk about too is that, you know, businesses. We were talking about this earlier too, because like we in security were like, oh, what about the security of this? Like all that matters to us sometimes, right? You get like this tunnel vision is about like how secure is this? Well, you know, companies aren't moving to the cloud because they're like, oh man, we have this huge security threshold. No, they're moving for the cloud for all kinds of other reasons, right? Whether it be availability or just scale, right? Being able to spin up lots of things very quickly. Maybe they just don't want to pay for their IT department. They want someone else to have to worry about all of that, right? So I think a lot of this comes into this like cloud, whether we should or not. But something that's come to my mind is that once you get all of that data there, like you can't leave hardly, right? Like you're kind of like centralizing everything.
You're locked in.
You're locked in, exactly.
It's technically Hotel California.
Yes,
exactly.
Right.
Now,
One of the
BPWEP said, I want to get some comments from some of the audience and said, I mean, is it really though? Cloud providers try to deflect and avoid blame constantly. They do, absolutely. I mean, in their PR releases, but as far as the narratives and what makes it in the news, they can say that, but still the news article is Microsoft was compromised, right?
Also,
well, I think
what IT team doesn't try to deflect and avoid blame constantly?
Yeah, I mean,
like, has anyone seen an IT team that doesn't do the same thing? Like, well, this was actually the app dev's problem, not ours.
I think with Microsoft,
speaking of
the whole concept of workplace CrossFit.
Oh,
with Microsoft's situation on this and them actually saying it is our fault, we screwed up, that now goes ahead and starts playing to the CEOs going, hey, wait a second, they're taking the blame, we're not taking the blame, our shareholders aren't going to get angry at us, we can now offshore this. It's actually a pretty savvy marketing move by Microsoft if you think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, a company of that size, the Microsofts, Amazons, the FANGs of the world, they don't get that size without having a very strong PR team with a very strong message rooted in some level of social engineering, right? I mean, there's some level of PSYOP associated with that, in that they have to control the narrative. And when you're talking about a company the size of Microsoft or Amazon or any of the FANG companies, they have the personnel, the bandwidth, and the capability to just bury any other narrative that is contrary to what they want to get put out. And the problem is when you're talking with a bunch of old, out of touch senators, they're going to see what's on the top half above the fold. And that's going to be the part that Microsoft is able to influence. Any large, evil, empire-sized company.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have to go ahead and disclose this stuff within 4 days, according to the SEC.
Oh, nice transition, Mike.
I'm so
Fantastic slam dunk. So yeah, so according to the SEC, you now have to disclose your breaches within 40 days or 4 days. God, I said 40. Jeez. How in that? Like, what the hell is the point? Like, how is this enforceable?
You
What?
tell in 4 days that you've been breached? Like, some people take months before they even are like, I think something's wrong.
Well, so wait, Ian, I think has about 400 disclosures he needs to make right now.
Oh God! So when this came up last week, it was fairly new, and it came up in I think one of the webcasts, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to go read about that. So I did, and then I picked up my desk and I threw it at a wall and started screaming, "You've done nothing! You've done nothing! By God, you've done nothing!" because so what I'm looking at here, and I'm going to dump the press release because we got the news article, but just so it's not like Ryan, I'm putting this in the private chat. So that's the SEC.gov press release. This is from the horse's mouth, and I'm going to break this down with 3 points as to why this does nothing. It sounds great. It's all warm and fuzzy, but the first part, item 106 in this thing says, item 106 will require registrants to describe the board of directors' oversight of risks and cybersecurity threats and management's role and expertise in assessing these material risks. These disclosures will be required in the registrant's annual Form 10K. So if you don't know what a Form 10K is, that's what public companies file every year to tell investors how their year went, what their year is going to look like, how they're protecting their investment. No CISO or company CISO, however you want to say it, in their right mind is going to give any level of detail that's going to inform any investor how well they're doing, because if they do, that's all public record, and it's a gift to threat actors. This is how they think about risk. This is the exact tools and procedures they use. And without that, it does nothing for investors to determine how sturdy they are against a risk. The second issue is the word reasonable. They use the word reasonable in this. I'm trying to find exactly where they use it inside here, but essentially it comes down to this. They say, once you reasonably know that you have been breached in a material impact way, right? So what is reasonable doing there? Good friends of mine who are lawyers have told me time and time again, reasonable is the most litigated word in courts, because basically once lawyers get to the point where they can't, come to some sort of compromise, they say, well, we'll just use reasonable and then we'll fight it in a lawsuit, because what's reasonable, same lawyer tells me, whatever I can convince a jury of, that's what's reasonable, right?
Yep.
The last point as to why this will do nothing, and a few of the folks already brought it up, right? Which was within 4 days. By whose determination? And they give a rule. It's called material impact. And again, for those who don't know what that is, materiality, when an accounting firm reviews security, reviews controls, reviews whatever, as part of the regulations that came out of Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley, those material points are things that basically, when you say something is material, it's something that will shift either the stock price, the value of the company, previous guidance. It's items that would do that. So a huge breach that costs like $100 million or something like that, that would be material, right? It would go through and impact the company that way. Here's the thing though. I can already tell you what's going to happen. They're going to say, yeah, no, we were breached 120 days ago, and we've been investigating, and we've been looking, and we've been finding, and 2 days ago, we determined, yeah, this is going to be materially impacting, and so we reported it. Those three things make this worthless. There are lawyers literally rewriting the definitions of things so they can take as long as they want to meet the SEC guidance. It's ridiculous.
You bring up some things that I have actually encountered in previous lives that would probably be beneficial here. Number one, I think we're going to see two things. I foresee this getting redacted because of the OSINT perspective. If you do OSINT on a publicly traded company and you don't touch the 10K form or the 8K or any of the other forms, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
But that also being said, in a past life, I worked with a client that was dealing with mergers and acquisitions. And when we wrote their report, we had to print the report, put it in a locking banking bag, and mail it to them. We weren't allowed to talk to them via email. We weren't allowed to digitally transmit the forms. And they put everything under attorney-client privilege so that it would not have to be disclosed. So what that's also possibly going to afford is an ability for organizations to put things under attorney-client privilege, make it privileged and confidential, so that they can, they can fully get away with not disclosing it. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but that may be a tactic that they could potentially use to delay even further.
So if anyone was wondering, there's actually already an index fund created of companies that have been breached. It's called the S&P 500.
Oh yeah, good one. Good one. It's a good payoff.
That was beautiful. I like that.
If you're wondering how this is going to impact all the 1099Ks or whatever they're called, 10Ks, that's how.
Yeah.
Those papers with K's and letters.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is patently absurd. And what's funny is you can tell just reading this that someone sat down at the SEC and was like, all right, we're going to use the power of the SEC and we're going to create cybersecurity regulations that these people have to follow because they're publicly traded. And after like 30 months of committee, this is what came out. And it's worthless. It's absolutely
Well, so
Yeah.
before you say the SEC is worthless, I'd like to remind
No,
you that
this
if
thing.
you look into, hold on, because if you look into the SEC, they actually investigated Bernie Madoff 3 times and thought he was clean before his whole Ponzi scheme. So,
true. Yeah.
I mean, just say they have an amazing history of really sussing out real risks to the financial industry.
Take them
Or-
away, toys.
Maybe Madoff had good lawyers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to
Probably
be
did.
fair, Madoff committed the cardinal sin of financial fraud, and that is stealing rich people's money.
Mhm.
Only take poor people.
Yeah.
Always take
Well,
poor first.
I mean, thinking about a 10K form, just for a smaller sized publicly traded company, you're talking a minimum of 40, if not up to over 100 pages. They can simply bury this as one single sentence and be done with it and just use vague language, very similar to what we see in terms and conditions now.
Yep. And
So
I would
it's
put
not-
it seriously. I would put it in every single one of my filings. 'Cause
People,
there's
so
always-
that's pretty funny. So, okay, people in the chat are asking, did cybersecurity professionals partake in the regulations? So we don't know. But one thing I can tell you is I have never met any cybersecurity professional that wishes there was more red tape around breach disclosures.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing. No one wants more red tape, more regulations when it comes to breach disclosures. What it comes down to is right now, companies have a due diligence they feel they need to fulfill. And a lot of the time, the bureaucracy, the red tape, the regulations are the thing that's preventing them from telling you to change your password, that your information's been disclosed. More red tape, more bureaucracy, more legal proceedings, that slows down the process even more. It puts more consumers at risk. That's why I would guess most cybersecurity people are going to be against this just as a concept, but that's just my take.
Here's the thing. I want to step back. I'm not against it. I'm pro anything where a big regulatory body at least takes a stab at moving the needle in the right direction. They just didn't accomplish anything here, in my mind. But it's good that they're trying. You did it. You're trying. You did it.
You get a participation trophy.
Everyone gets one.
You tried, buddy.
All right.
John's
Let's-
idea of just putting a breach disclosure on every
I'll
Just
love
do it.
We've been breached every
We're
quarter.
just like, we've been breached. We don't have any, and we don't just take the stock hit up front and just be like,
No,
yeah,
it's
we
just-
don't know
yeah.
anything. We don't know
We have-
anything about
there
it.
have
We
been
just know we were breached.
multiple cybersecurity incidents. The investigations are still ongoing.
All operations have continued and no production has been stalled. So
For the low fee of $0, you can too listen to this podcast and your CISO can make the same decision as John. I mean, there you go.
You would love John.
That's why
to-
we will,
kind of
one
a
of the
fun thought
reasons
to end
we will
on.
never be a publicly traded company ever. So
Kind of a fun thought to end on. A Red Team Wrangler saw some of my posts over the weekend and made a little sticker. I don't think he's having it printed for DEF CON, but it was akin to the California cancer warning, and it was SEC Regulation 105, and it's the federal government recognizes this product may contain threats that cause breaches or something like that. And I was like, yeah, it's about that effective. Absolutely.
yeah, exactly.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great example of how not to do it. Talk about alert fatigue and all that. Like it's like, oh, so everyone's breached, so no one's breached. All right, cool. Moving on. All the stock prices are the same. Like
The Incredibles, when everybody's breached,
Mm-hmm.
no one will be.
yes, exactly. Oh man.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, y'all, for joining. Let's put a wrap on it. Monday. Whew. Am I right, guys?
take Joe's
did it.
class.
We
Take
did it.
Joe's
Take
class.
Joe's class. Joe is an awesome OSINT class. Please get on it. It's awesome. So with that, Ryan, take us out. Ryan.